Welcome to this explainer. The next time you grab a carton of eggs at the grocery store, you might want to pause and consider the absolute chaotic battlefield that carton just survived to make it to your fridge. Today, we're unpacking the fascinating business behind the largest U.S. egg producer, Cal-Maine Foods. We're going to see exactly how a massive agricultural giant navigates wild price swings, global biological threats, and totally unpredictable input costs, all through what is basically a masterclass in strategic evolution. All right. Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the Cal-Maine egg empire, navigating egg price volatility, the ever-present avian flu threat, production and feed costs, and finally, pivoting to diversified growth. Let's jump right in.
Section 1. The Cal-Maine egg empire, scale and operations.
So to really understand Cal-Maine, you have to realize we're not just talking about a big farm here. This is a vertically integrated corporate juggernaut that literally powers the American breakfast. According to 2025 USDA data, the U.S. market is basically split. You've got 69% of table eggs sold as your traditional shell eggs, the raw ones you buy in cartons. The other 31%? Those are egg products. Think liquid, frozen, or dried eggs used in commercial baking and food service. Now, Cal-Maine absolutely dominates that massive shell egg space, but as we'll see a bit later in this explainer, they're aggressively eyeing that remaining 31% slice for their future growth.
A huge part of how they dominate that market comes down to this one concept: inline facilities. Substantially all of Cal-Maine's farms use these highly modernized setups. The eggs are mechanically gathered, cleaned, graded, and packaged exactly at the location where they're laid. No extra steps. So the real takeaway here is efficiency. These inline facilities totally eliminate the need to transport fragile, unwashed eggs to some secondary processing plant. That saves serious money. It drastically reduces inventory time to an average of just 6 days, and it actually results in a much higher percentage of premium USDA Grade A eggs.
And well, when you produce that many eggs that efficiently, you naturally attract the biggest buyers in the world. But it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Get this, 30%. In fiscal 2026, Walmart and Sam's Club alone accounted for exactly 30% of Cal-Maine's consolidated net sales. Having the world's largest retailer as your main customer guarantees incredible volume, for sure, but it also means immense pressure. You have to maintain supply, manage costs, and keep those shelves fully stocked no matter what the market is doing.
Section 2. Navigating egg price volatility, the Wild West of wholesale.
Because honestly, pricing a simple grocery staple is a lot closer to the Wild West than you might think. The dizzying spikes and crashes in wholesale pricing for large white shell eggs across the past few fiscal years have been intense. For Cal-Maine, this index heavily dictates the revenue for their conventional eggs. See, they aren't setting the price you pay at the register. Their wholesale prices are largely tied to this incredibly volatile cyclical commodity market. It swings wildly based on seasonal demand, flock sizes, consumer habits. It is fundamentally uncontrollable.
So how do you survive that kind of chaos? Cal-Maine employs a really critical balancing act. On one side of the equation, conventional eggs just ride the roller coaster of those fluctuating market-based wholesale indices. But on the other side, you've got specialty eggs, things like cage-free, organic, and pasture-raised. These are typically priced based on stable, cost-of-production formulas that are negotiated directly with customers. While conventional eggs give them a chance to profit during massive market spikes, specialty eggs offer a steady, predictable profit margin that shields the whole company during the inevitable crashes.
Section 3. The avian flu threat, a biological crisis.
Market pricing is definitely not their only volatile element. This number is just staggering: 19.2 million. That is the number of commercial layer hens and pullets, which are young hens by the way, depopulated or culled nationwide due to highly pathogenic avian influenza in just the first part of 2026 alone. And that's following over 85 million lost in the 2 years prior. A single outbreak at a farm means total depopulation of the flock to stop the spread. Cal-Maine actually went through this in March 2026, losing hundreds of thousands of pullets at a single facility in Maryland.
To fight back against this invisible enemy, Cal-Maine isn't just sitting around crossing their fingers. They've heavily fortified their facilities, investing over $92 million in biosecurity technology, equipment, supplies, and training since the major 2015 outbreak. It's a massive capital expenditure, and it is strictly dedicated to protecting their flocks and, by extension, their entire revenue stream.
But here's where we see the ultimate tension of the business. Their corporate filings lay bare a pretty stark reality. HPAI is currently widespread in the wild bird population worldwide. No farm is immune to HPAI. I mean, despite spending nearly $100 million in defense, management openly admits that nature is ultimately uncontrollable. One infected migrating wild bird can completely upend the supply chain at literally any moment.
Section 4. Production and feed costs. Feeding the flock.
All right, before the egg comes out, we really have to look at what goes into the bird. Feeding tens of millions of chickens is a massive economic puzzle, all on its own. Feed is the single largest primary cost component in the production of shell eggs, and the global commodity markets for their two main ingredients, corn and soybean meal, are just as chaotic as the egg market itself. A drought in the Midwest or a sudden shift in global trade policies can send these input costs skyrocketing, which just completely squeezes their profit margins.
To try and tame that chaos, Cal-Maine uses financial tools called basis contracts. Think of it like locking in your spot in line with local grain farmers early on while waiting to settle on the exact final futures price closer to the actual delivery date. It's a pretty clever risk management strategy to ensure their massive silos are never empty while at the same time dodging sudden price spikes during harvest. And they absolutely need those silos full because the scale of their appetite is unbelievable. 2.2 million, that's the sheer tonnage of finished feed Cal-Maine required in fiscal 2026. To put that into perspective, it's an absolute mountain of feed. What's even more incredible is that they milled 2.1 million tons of that themselves. By keeping the vast majority of feed production in-house, they maintain strict control over the nutritional quality for their flocks, which, of course, directly impacts the quality of the eggs they sell to us.
Section 5. Pivoting to diversified growth beyond the shell.
So we've seen the wild volatility in pricing, the ever-present threat of disease, and the fluctuating costs of feed. It begs the billion-dollar question, how do you build long-term resilience? Because in this industry, the old saying is quite literal. You really cannot afford to put all your eggs in one basket. When your core product is highly perishable, completely dependent on live animals, susceptible to migrating birds, and priced by an external commodity index, you have to evolve.
Their answer? A massive buying spree. Cal-Maine is aggressively acquiring businesses outside of the raw shell egg market. We're talking places like Vans Foods, Echo Lake Foods, Crepini. They are buying companies that make waffles, crepes, pre-cooked egg patties, and hard-cooked eggs. Why? Because in the prepared food sector, prices are stable, you can lock in long-term contracts, and the profit margins are significantly higher.
This entire buying spree builds into what the company explicitly calls the egg value ladder. They are purposely climbing up these rungs. They start at the base with those unpredictable conventional eggs. Then they step up to specialty shell eggs like cage-free and organic, which give them much better margin stability. And now they are vaulting to the top rung, prepared value-added foods. They're taking their own raw material and turning it into premium, branded consumer products.
And they are putting some serious capital behind this strategy. Right now, they're investing heavily in high-speed pancake lines, network optimization, and new equipment to increase their prepared foods production capacity by over 30% between mid-2027 and 2028. They are fundamentally reorganizing the company to be a diversified food platform, not just a traditional egg farm.
Which leaves us with this final thought. As you've seen in this explainer, stocking that seemingly simple egg aisle requires navigating global commodity markets, fighting microscopic biological wars, and executing massive corporate acquisitions. The next time you open a carton of eggs or pop a frozen waffle into the toaster, ask yourself, how much more will the food on our plates have to evolve to survive the unpredictable world of tomorrow? Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.